All right, Sarah, you there?
Yep.
Sorry to have taken a little bit of your time.
No
Um,
worries at all.
all right, why don't we get right into it? Sarah, if you want to briefly introduce yourself, and then we're going to talk about, we're going to see your presentation.
Yep, sure. Hey, everyone. Thank you for being here today. Super excited to be here as well. I've been doing SEO for 8 years. I worked both agency side and client side. I've also worked with big businesses, small businesses, international brands, and I'm super excited to be here today.
Awesome.
Yep. So today I'm gonna talk to you about entity SEO. It's such a big topic, and the reason I picked that topic is that I found that most of the content about entity SEO is more about the theory part more than the tactical and execution part. So today I'll do my best to make sure you understand what is an entity and why it's important, how to incorporate that into your SEO workflows, and to have the right mindset to approach content moving forward. So before I keep talking about entity all the time, I wanted to make sure we understand we have an established ground of what an entity is. So an entity, as per Google's definition, is a thing or concept that is singular, unique, well-defined, and distinguishable. Um, and I would like to stress or highlight the concept that about being singular. So, for example, if you search on Google for book versus searching for books, you get very much somewhat different results. If you search for celebrity versus celebrities, you get different results. And again, so an entity can be a person, a place, an item, an idea. It can be it doesn't have to be a physical thing. I've seen people define entities as anything that has a Wikipedia page, but I think the best definition or the best way to identify an entity is just if it's a noun or not linguistically. um, this graph you see there, this is something I just brainstormed. Every single yellow circle there is an entity, right? And this graph shows the connection between entities, right? And this is a very simple, basic example of um, a semantic network, or what we are going to be talking about today as well, a knowledge graph. So an entity, some beauty can be like it can be an entity, but beautiful is not. Running shoes is an entity, but best running shoes is not. And best running shoes is more about like a list of entities, right? A book is an entity, books is not an entity. With that said, I will walk you through why we need to think of entities in the first place. Like what happened here? Like we were doing keyword research and, it was good. So why do we need to think about entities now? So actually it's the concept of entities is not new. It's just more talked about today. So around 10 years ago or a bit more, the SERPs were filled with low quality results. Things like keyword stuffing, so um, copied content, thin content, and so on. Cloaking, where the user sees content that's different from what the search engine sees, and the version that search engine sees has so many keyword stuffing, in the same background, the text in the same color as the background. So Google wanted to move away from those tactics that can be easily manipulated to rank, and therefore not providing users with the best results. So in 2011, Google launched or released the Panda update, and it's said that it's one of the biggest, if not the biggest, Google update to date. It did take a lot of websites out of business because it doubled down on any low quality content and rewarded quality content. While the SEO community was still recovering from Panda, Google striked again with the Penguin update. And that was more about Black Hat SEO, Black Hat SEO link building tactics. And then in the same year, Google introduced a new concept, which is the knowledge graph, right? And the purpose of that was, again, to move away from tactics that would be easily manipulated or easily um, used in a spammy way to manipulate search results. And then later on, Google released Hummingbird, which is more about search intent and so on. And a lot of things happened ever since. So with the introduction of the knowledge graph, Google wanted to be able to help the user better, right? To find the right things, get the best summary, and go deeper and broader. And what does that mean? So in that example, when we search for Diana, when was Diana born, right? You didn't mention any information about Diana. Who is Diana? Or like just Diana, right? So Google is able to know that you're talking about Princess of Wales, Princess Diana. It's able to get you the best summary and the best answer. And then it's also able to return related entities. If you look at the bottom, people also search for there's Charles, Queen Elizabeth, Prince Harry. These are all related entities. So that was the one of or some of the main benefits of having a knowledge graph, right? So basically Google moved to things not strings, right? So the concept was no more focus on words but the things, right? And real world entities. So for example, when you search for Robert Downey Jr., very famous actor, on image search, you will see that using image search, you'll see there are some entities returned below that are relevant to Robert Downey Jr., like Avengers, like Mark Raphael, right? Like a lot of things, right? So, and that shows that these entities are connected for Google, right? Okay, so I want to give you an example of how Google approaches text to converts it into a semantic network or a knowledge graph. So, for example, that's a text, a paragraph that can be on any page. Google analyze it and create a knowledge graph out of it, right? So this is why we basically need to consider thinking about content in a knowledge graph way, because when Google evaluates your content, it's also going to use the knowledge graph it has. Um, Google also have one of the evidence of importance of entities is that Google has, if you click on those three dots in search results about this result, a while back it used to get to return more information about why you are seeing this result. Why was this result selected? So, for example, when you search for how to cook fish in the oven, you would see, for example, because obviously this result has the keywords that you have in the query, but you also see that because this page has other words or other entities that are important to this query. For example, ingredients, right? Recipe, bacon. So things that are important to have in the page that are not in the keyword, right? So in other words, can you write a recipe without talking about ingredients? It doesn't make sense. You may be able to work around it. So the purpose is that when you write a topic, you want to make sure that you mention all the entities that Google think are relevant, because it's important for Google, because this will make your content more relevant and appear and perform better in search. So you may be wondering, how does that look like? So let's take an example topic. Yeah. So let's take an example topic, road trip to Florida. So if you're doing keyword research as usual, you would go about it like, okay, these are the keywords: road trip to Florida, Florida road trip FL, which also stands for Florida. But if you're considering entities, you would add words like map, travel, itinerary, planner, right? And then another example, 7-day Dubai itinerary, keywords would be the usual: Dubai itinerary, Dubai trip itinerary, 7-day Dubai itinerary, Dubai itinerary 7 days. But if you're talking about entities, again, you're going to add some terms or entities, as we're talking about, that are not part of the keyword, like tour, Airbnb, tourist attraction. These terms need to be also on the page. And if you notice that keywords, they usually have similarities between them, right? Like road trip is in all the keywords, right? But for entities, they don't have the same words as the main topic or as the keywords. Okay, so with the introduction of entities, what does that mean for SEOs? It means few things. Um, First of all, spelling is not that important. Color in the American and the British spelling, it doesn't really matter. You don't need to go, oh, this has a higher search volume, I'm gonna use this one, because Google knows that both mean the same thing, the same entity. Keyword matrix. When we talk about density and how much you repeat the same keyword, exact match keyword on the page. So buy shoes online, buy shoes online, buy shoes online. It's really less and less relevant now. It's more about the entire entity as a whole and how much thorough you are when you cover a topic. Variations. Google understands that, for example, Robert Downey Jr., the actor, is same as RDJ, which is his nickname. And then topical authority. This means that you cannot have actual achieve topical authority without being able to um, have include entities. You cannot have topical authority without entities, right? Because entities help you go in depth and cover the topic as you should, like thoroughly. Okay, now we know what an entity is, why we need to use entities, how do we do entity research. Um, there's someone asking. Yes, I will show you how you can take advantage of entity SEO to grow your business. I have a case study, and it's really awesome. So yeah, stay tuned. Um, as I showed, the first way, it's simplest way. First of all, there's a lot of automated tools, but there are also other ways you can do that. So, for example, you can search for a keyword or or an entity, your main entity, for example, and see what other entities are returned. And there are two things you need to take into consideration: that you need to do this in cognito mode because you don't want personalized results. The second thing is that the data returned here, or that list, is a mix of search terms and entities. It's not all entities. So you'll need to like filter through it, note down relevant entities that you want to include in your content. Second thing you should try is going to Google Trends, pull related queries and topics. Again, you'll need to filter through them and find, depending on what your entity is, find the relevant entities. Again, collect data from autocomplete and search suggestions. For example, for swimsuits, bathing suits is another entity, right? And it's actually another name for the same entity because Google probably knows that swimming suits is the same as bathing suits. So you can actually use both in the body of the content. Another thing you can consider is going to Wikipedia. So, for example, if you're writing an article about Florida, you can search for Florida on Wikipedia, go to Florida page, and then analyze it there, and find what relevant entities are mentioned there. You can take note of that, and these are things you may want to mention in your article. One more thing, or there's still a few things. So also you can use Google Knowledge Graph to pull relevant entities. So for example, search for British royal family or whatever entity you're interested in finding relevant entities for. And then you can click on people also search for, and then you'll get a list of other relevant entities. Also, I like this one so much, Google Knowledge Graph Search API. You can use the demo. You don't need to uh, buy it or anything, and you can paste paragraphs or paste just a sentence or whatever, and Google shows you what in that text that you pasted, what it considers as an entity. And then non-web resources, as the graph I created just off the top of my head. You can brainstorm. You can just sit down. Okay, I'm writing an article about how to bake fish in an oven. What what are relevant entities that make sense to be mentioned on that content? Okay, we know what entities are. We know why they're important. We know how to find them, but how to incorporate them in my workflow. Like I'm doing SEO today. What should I do to include entities? First of all, and I feel this is a really good strategy for you to do anytime. Like if you're anytime you're executing a content strategy or doing a content audit, it's a great way to start by creating a topical map. A topical map is basically like I created this on Google Sheets and I did it manually. It's just a map showing you like the topics and subtopics and how they are all structured on the website. And there are many ways you can do this. You can do it manually if the website is small. You can use tools like Screaming Frog and use the tree graph. But then the only thing is that if the website is too big, your graph is going to look so messy in Screaming Frog, and you're probably not going to be able to use it. So I recommend that you only crawl like 200 or 300 pages at most, and then understand like what's going on the website. Another thing you can do is actually go through the sitemap, and that's actually one of the very useful techniques. Like just go through the sitemap and understand where are topics and how they're structured, what topics you have and how they're structured, right? Yep. Next, so you have your graph. Okay, let's say you want to optimize Zion National Park page. So you have the page, you'll do your usual keyword research, you pull long tail keywords, you'll have some information about it. Okay, what about the entities? Again, you use the tools that we mentioned above. Um, Image search, entity, Google Knowledge Graph, and so on. And you'll, for example, for this example and for simplicity, I just picked two entities, hiking and Cable Mountain, but there are a lot of other entities that we can include as well. Um, So you end up with something like this. This is again is a very high level. Some people like to include, for example, a lot of other details for the keywords, but just at a high level, you'll have, okay, that's the topic. This is the main keyword. These are the long tail keywords, and these are the entities. And if you notice that bottom of funnel pages usually represent one single entity. And bottom of funnel pages are usually like conversion pages, service or product pages. They usually represent one single entity, usually. Um, but what if you're working on something like how to bake fish in an oven? This is not an article representing one entity. It's a guide for a process, and it does mention a few entities, right? So the reason I'm saying that is I don't want to give the impression that every single page necessarily have one main entity. Okay, so yeah, once you have this sorted out, you have your keywords, long tail, entities, and you're optimizing. Um, so I'm just reading a question. We'll get into that, no worries. So once you have this information and you start you're done optimizing your page. The next thing is schema, right? And one cool thing you can do, or great thing you can do, is if your page has one main entity, you can use web page schema and then add main entity data, right? And look for, like, for example, I'm talking about a park. Yeah, there's a schema.org specific type for park. So main entity is park, and then you add the information there, and then you add same as, and you mention the Wikipedia page that refers to parks, right? You want to tell Google this entity is the same as that, because Google uses Wikipedia in its knowledge graph, right? So that is the case if you have one main entity and you have a schema type for it. But what if you don't have a main entity, or you don't have a specific schema type, right? Like, for example, for tour, what if you want to tell Google that this page is also talking about an entity called tour? So this is where you'll use the other schema code that I have on the slides. And I did put those codes here. So you are able to, you'll get the slides afterwards and you'll be able to like test that and, experiment with it. So you can just create the type thing and then give it a name, which is tour. And then it's same as, and then refer to a Wikipedia page, the relevant Wikipedia page representing that entity. So you updated the content, you added your schema. The last piece of the puzzle is the internal linking, right? Internal linking, there's nothing new here. It's same as usual. You'll do your usual routine. For every main entity of your website, every entity that means something, you make sure that anytime it's mentioned on your website, it's linked back. You have an internal link to it, right? So for example, for the Zion National Park, that's a page representing that entity. Anytime on any page that Zion National Park is mentioned, you'll link back to that page, right? So internal linking is so important, and it gets more important when you're creating entities. um, I hope the process is no, it's not. Okay, Olivia, that's a really good question. Entities is not limited only to English language. Actually, entities help Google understand different languages. So it understands, for example, the like car in English is the same as Auto in German, for example. Okay, this is like the funnest part for me. Case study. And yeah, so this is a case study by Brian Cato, and I did add the link to it. It's really, really good. What happened is that this is a small business, a local business, and it's offering some sort of service, and they wanted to do SEO for it. So what did was really cool. They did entity SEO and using Google Maps, and they identified local entities, so geographical entities. So for example, if you're like a business, what are the main landmarks that are near you that are identified by Google as entities, right? And then they took note of all of these entities, and then they started to incorporate them and sew them into the content. So for example, XYZ contractor, which is the client, is located in Old Town Fort Collins, which is an entity, and then just ahead of Horse Tooth, that's another entity, and minutes from Colorado State University, another entity. So they incorporated all those local entities into the content, and it was amazing to see that this website. So to be very transparent, the work done was mainly technical, and then entity SEO, and the usual on-page optimization and entity SEO. And the website received 32% lift by simply adding geographically relevant terms to the page and linking to driving directions, right? So they added driving directions from those nearby entities to the client location. And yeah, it's a really, really good case study because it's so simple, but it's so smart as well. Okay, I see someone asked how to rank entities on search. So first of all, what does that look like? A good example is if you search for father of SEO, you'll have Bruce Clay it shows up. So that's a way. That's what we mean by ranking entities on search. Your entity appears for the relevant names it have, for example, right? Um, so how does that happen? It happens, first of all, relatedness. How related an entity is this to the search term? When you type father of SEO, how much is Bruce Clay or any other SEOs related to that term? How often is Bruce Clay mentioned in the context as on other websites as the father of SEO, right? So that's relatedness. How much are you known for that? And then notability. So notability is it's okay. What's the when you search for Apple on Google? Don't do that right now. Just guess. Are you gonna get Apple the company or Apple the fruit? You're gonna get okay. I'm gonna break the silence here. You're gonna get Apple the company. Why? Why are you getting Apple the company, not Apple the fruit? Even though Apple the fruit is also an entity, like because of notability. So notability is Google is able to compare how important and how valuable an entity is in an industry compared to other industries. So what that means is that Apple as a fruit versus Apple as a company, which is more notable? And that's based off a lot of things like links, reviews, mentions, and relevance. So a lot of things. So even though they're not in the same industry, it's not like there are two companies called Apple and then Google needs to decide. No, they are two entities called Apple in different industries. So Notability, Google is able to compare them across industries and decide this is what the user is actually looking for. This is more likely what the user is looking for. And then the third thing is contribution. So contribution is in the same, so Notability is across industries or segments. No, contribution is in the same segment or industry. So if you assume that there are two companies called Apple, which one is gonna be returned or rank when someone search for Apple? Or if there is two people called Ali de Solis, right? How many? Who's gonna be? Who's gonna show up when you um, search for that person? And so contribution and notability are a bit different because, as I said, contribution is how much someone is known for a specific thing in a specific segment, and then notability is across different industries totally. Last, prizes. So if you've been, and one more thing about contribution is also how often you are referred to or how often you are mentioned in an industry as well. Prizes is very clear from its name. Did you get any awards? Do you get any prizes? Any notable or any remarkable prize is definitely would definitely help you rank. And this is why we always recommend to website owners and anyone who's trying to rank, really, if you have like any certifications, if you have any prizes, any awards, anything of that sort, you definitely need to mention that on the website. And add the badge, link back, maybe give a brief, like write the name of the award or that sort of thing, right? All of these things are valuable. Okay, I did mention tools, but this is like a super tool that I also added a link to, and I highly encourage you to try it. So basically, what you do, this tool can take a bulk, like a bigger chunk of text, and show you all the entities there. And this is useful because it helps you analyze your competitors' pages. So, for example, you can like whatever pages you're competing against, and you like, okay, I want to like pull all of the entities they have there or see what's relevant that I want to mention. That's a really good tool to help you do that. And yep, I added a list of resources. It's really hard to talk about entity SEO without mentioning Kurai and holistic SEO. Please make sure to check his website. He has tons of content there. And super happy to be here today. And yeah, that's it for today. I think I can answer some questions. I can take one question actually.
Cool. Thank you so much, Sarah. I think you've been monitoring the chat. Why don't you let's answer one more question before we take a quiz.
Yep. Okay. So someone did mention how they can take advantage of entity SEO to grow their business. So I think we did touch that briefly, or we did discuss that in the case study. You just need to find identify your main entities or entity. Maybe it's a service, maybe it's a specific product, or if you offering a set of products, and then optimize their pages by including the relevant entities that should be there. Yeah, that's.
Awesome. Do you see one more question that we could answer? Maybe is the concept of entity SEO limited to the English language?
Yeah, I did touch on that. Yeah,
Okay.
definitely, it's not limited. It's not limited to that at all. It's actually that's the power. How powerful knowledge graph is. It does understand. It's a lingual graph.
Awesome. Well, hey, thank you so much. This was very, very insightful with